Welcome back, everyone. We're diving into a story today, um, a clash of worlds, really. I mean, can you imagine what it must have been like back in 1519? You're living in the Aztec Empire. Everything you know, your whole world, it's about to be turned upside down
Mm.
by, well, Hernan Cortez and his conquistadors.
Yeah, it's one of those moments in history that just grabs you. And you know what? Cortez, he wasn't really supposed to conquer an empire.
Right, right.
His mission when he left Cuba, it was pretty basic. Explore, find some gold, maybe track down some of those mythical creatures people were talking about.
Okay, so maybe a little more than find some gold.
Yeah.
But still, I mean, to go from that to taking on the Aztecs, the whole
It's
empire,
a huge leap, yeah.
it really makes you wonder what was driving this guy.
Well, the gold was definitely a factor. Spain in the 16th century, they were all about getting more wealth, more power. But it wasn't just greed. Cortez, like a lot of these conquistadors, he was seriously religious.
Hmm.
They believed they were bringing Christianity to the New World.
Even if it meant using force.
Yeah.
It's such a strange mix.
It is. Piety and conquest, religious zeal, and then, brutality. It makes you think about the justifications people use, how they rationalize their actions.
It's really complex. And it's not always so black and white, is it?
Not at all. And with the Spanish conquest of Mexico, one of the things that really jumps out is the role technology played.
You mean like the horses, the cannons?
Exactly.
I bet the Aztecs had never seen anything like those before. Must have been terrifying.
Oh, absolutely. Imagine seeing a horse for the first time. This massive creature, and it's being ridden by a man in armor, carrying a weapon that can kill you from far away. And then you have the diseases the Spanish brought with them, smallpox, measles. The Aztecs, they had no immunity to these
It
things.
must have felt like the end of the world. But even with all that, all the advantages, Cortez, he couldn't have done it alone, right?
Right. That's where Lama Lynch comes in.
Lama Lynch.
One of the most fascinating figures in this whole story, maybe even controversial too.
Tell me more.
She was a young indigenous woman, sold into slavery, and she ends up with Cortez.
He was given a slave.
It was a different time, different customs. But what's important, Lama Lynch, she becomes a lot more than just a slave. She was incredible with languages. She was Cortez's translator. But she did more than that. She helped him understand the Aztec culture, their politics, where they were vulnerable.
So like a cultural advisor, almost a strategist.
Exactly. That had to have been incredibly valuable to Cortez.
No doubt. But we have to think about her side of things, too.
Her motivation.
She was betrayed by her own people, sold into slavery.
Yeah. She saw Cortez maybe as a way to get revenge, a way to change the power dynamics in her world.
Makes you wonder, was she using Cortez? Was she manipulating him? Or was she just surviving, playing the game to come out ahead?
It's a complex question, and it shows how these personal stories, the choices individuals make, they can have a huge impact on history.
Absolutely. But what about the Aztecs? How did they see all of this unfolding?
It's easy to just picture them as victims, cowering before the Spanish, but it was much more nuanced than that.
Okay.
The Aztecs, they had built a powerful empire. They had sophisticated military strategies, complex social structures. Their capital, Tenochtitlan.
That was a remarkable city, right?
It was incredible, a marvel of engineering, architecture. It stood as a symbol of their power.
So they weren't just going to give up without a fight.
Exactly. The question is, how did they see these newcomers? Were they gods, like some of the stories say, or were they a threat, or maybe even opportunity? We have to remember the Aztecs, they were used to dealing with other indigenous groups. They made alliances, played rivals off each other. They weren't naive.
So they had all this experience, the Aztecs dealing with different groups, different cultures. What happened when Cortez decided to make his move inland?
Well, that's where Cortez's, his boldness and Lama Lynch's knowledge, that really comes into play. He knew he couldn't just take on the whole Aztec army, not head on. So he didn't go for a direct attack. He had to be a little more subtle.
So not a frontal assault, more like a game of chess.
Exactly. He understood the Aztec Empire. It wasn't one solid block, There were all these other groups, indigenous groups, and a lot of them, they resented Aztec rule. They saw the Aztecs as oppressors.
And Cortez, he picked up on that, saw that as a way in.
Absolutely. And Lama Lynch, she was key to all of this. She knew the landscape, but I mean that figuratively too. She helped Cortez understand all these alliances, these rivalries. It was complicated. And Cortez, he was brilliant at exploiting those divisions.
So he starts making alliances with the Aztecs' enemies. But were these groups really I don't know, were they really ready to just join up with the Spanish? They were outsiders too, weren't they?
That's a really good point, and it shows how skilled Cortez was as a manipulator. He would play on their grievances, promise them freedom from the Aztecs, even offer them, a share of the spoils. And then, of course, he had the horses, the cannons. That must have made a big impression.
Oh, yeah, that technology.
Yeah.
It's amazing how he was able to pull together this force,
Yeah.
all these different groups united against the Aztecs.
It wasn't easy, though. It wasn't, a smooth path all the way.
Right.
Cortez, he had to deal with ambushes, rebellions, even arguments among his own allies, but he never lost sight of his goal,
Tenochtitlan.
Tenochtitlan, which, that city, it was incredible.
I've seen pictures.
Mhm.
Built on an island in a lake, causeways connecting it to the mainland. Must have been an amazing sight.
It was a real testament to Aztec engineering,
Yeah.
a symbol of their power. Cortez knew that if he could take Tenochtitlan, that was the key to the whole empire. But it wouldn't be easy. The Aztecs had strong defenses. They had a large army, and it was a well-trained army.
So how do you attack a city like that?
Well, first, Cortez had to get there. That march inland, it was dangerous, unfamiliar territory. He was facing resistance from Aztecs who were still loyal to the empire. He was always having to manage that alliance, keep it from falling apart. And through it all, La Malinche, she's right there with him, translating, negotiating, helping him understand what was going on.
She really was his secret weapon.
She was. But we can't forget about those Spanish weapons either. The first time the Aztecs saw the horses, saw the cannons in action, it must have been terrifying. It was like nothing they'd ever seen.
Like they were fighting beings from another world.
But did technology alone win it for Cortez?
It was a factor, definitely. But Cortez, he was also he was a master of what you might call psychological warfare. He knew how to use Aztec beliefs, their superstitions, to his advantage. For example, he timed his arrival. He arrived at the same time that Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent god, was supposed to return.
Oh, wow.
So the Aztecs, they were confused. They started to question their own leaders, their own prophecies. He's playing on their beliefs, their fears. That's really cunning.
And he used intimidation, too. Lots of it. He would put on these displays of military power, firing off the cannons, sending the cavalry charging. It was all about creating this aura of invincibility, making the Aztecs wonder, can we really defeat these people?
It sounds like he was pushing his luck sometimes.
Yeah.
What was the Aztec reaction to all of this?
It was a mix. Awe, fear, defiance. Some did see the Spanish as gods. Others saw them as demons. And within the Aztec leadership, there were different groups who wanted to take different approaches. Some wanted to appease the Spanish, some wanted to negotiate, and some wanted to go to war.
So it wasn't like they were all just terrified and ready to surrender.
No, not at all. They were debating, disagreeing on how to deal with this threat, a threat unlike anything they'd ever faced.
Right. This is what makes this story so interesting.
Yeah.
It's not a simple, good versus evil story.
Mhm.
It's not Europeans with advanced technology just conquering the natives. It's about different cultures clashing. It's about complex motivations. And it's about individuals making choices that had huge consequences.
Exactly.
So Cortez, he's made his way inland. He's put together this alliance. He's used technology. He's used cunning. He's used intimidation to get this far. But the real prize, it's still out there. Tenochtitlan. What happens when he finally reaches the Aztec capital? So we left off Cortez. He's at the gates of Tenochtitlan. I mean, can you imagine that moment? It's like two worlds colliding.
Yeah, you've got these conquistadors, tough, they've seen a lot, and they're looking up at this incredible city, nothing like it back home. And on the other side, you had the Aztecs. They're trying to figure out, what are these strangers? Where did they come from? What do they want?
And Montezuma, the Aztec emperor, he's got a tough choice to make. How do you deal with someone like Cortez?
It seems like at first, Montezuma, he played it safe. He sent emissaries with gifts, gold, feathers, these beautiful works of art.
Trying to win them over?
Yeah, hoping to appease them and also to learn more about them. What were their intentions?
So like a diplomatic dance.
Exactly. And Cortez, well, he was always a smart strategist. He used those gifts, he gave some of them to his indigenous allies.
Showing them, hey, stick with me. There's good stuff to be had.
Right, building up that loyalty, showing them the potential rewards. But even with the gifts, even with the diplomacy, you can sense this tension. Cortez, he wasn't there to make friends. He was driven by ambition. He wanted gold, he wanted glory, and he had La Malinche always there, advising him, influencing his decisions.
What do you think it was like for the people of Tenochtitlan, seeing these outsiders come into their city? Must have been scary.
Yeah, there are accounts from that time that talk about, fear, but also curiosity and even resentment. Imagine seeing these men on horses with their armor and their weapons marching through your streets. It would have been unsettling, to say the least.
And Montezuma, how did he react to Cortez and to Cortez getting more and more powerful?
It seems like he was conflicted. He let Cortez and his men into the city, but he also tried to control them, to keep them in check.
Almost like he was trying to contain them, to stop them from getting too strong.
Yeah, exactly. But Cortez, he sensed that hesitation, that uncertainty, and he made a bold move. He took Montezuma hostage.
Wow, he took the emperor hostage.
He did. Essentially, he was using Montezuma as a puppet to control Tenochtitlan.
Yeah, that's a risky move.
It was, and it almost backfired. The Aztecs, they were furious. They saw their emperor being humiliated, and they revolted. Cortez and his men, they were trapped, barricaded in their quarters, fighting for their lives.
So from diplomacy, it went straight to open warfare.
It did. Things can change very quickly. It shows how even the best laid plans, they can fall apart when you factor in human emotions, anger, resentment, that desire for freedom.
This whole story it's full of twists and turns. You have Cortez, this ambitious, determined conquistador, pushing his luck at every turn. Montezuma, stuck between a rock and a hard place. He's trying to appease the Spanish, but he also wants to hold on to his power. And then you have La Malinche working behind the scenes, shaping events with her knowledge, her intelligence.
It's a story that really makes you think, makes you question your assumptions about history. There are no easy answers here, no clear heroes or villains. It's a reminder that even when you have these huge clashes between civilizations, it's often the choices of individuals that really determine what happens.
That's what makes it so fascinating. It's not just, battles and dates. It's about people. It's about their ambitions, their fears, their desires. And it really makes you wonder, how would we react in a situation like that? Would we have the courage, the smarts, the resilience to survive in such a crazy world?
That's the power of history. It lets us step back in time. It lets us see the past through the eyes of the people who lived it. And when we do that, we learn something about ourselves, about the choices we make, and how those choices can ripple out and affect the world around us.
And that's why we keep exploring, right?
That's right.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the Spanish conquest of the Aztec Empire. It's a complicated story, a fascinating story, and we've only just scratched the surface. But hopefully it's made you curious, made you want to learn more. So until next time, keep exploring.